She came storming out of her house, robe flapping in the wind like some angry suburban general. Her finger jabbed the air as she shouted across the street, "Turn that obnoxious music off. This is a neighborhood, not a parade ground." I didn't say a word. I just stood there in full dress uniform, holding a folded American flag so tight my knuckles had gone white. The drumline kept playing, soft and steady in the distance. Not loud, not wild, just the rhythm of boots and memory. Karen. That's what we all called her. Didn't notice the line of veterans standing still in salute. Didn't see the small crowd gathered in silence down the block. She didn't see the black armbands, or the gold star pinned to the lapel of the woman next to me, whose hands trembled as she clutched a framed photo. Karen just kept yelling, "I'm calling the HOA. This is a noise violation. It's Saturday morning, for God's sake." She didn't know the music wasn't for show. She didn't know we weren't out here to make noise. We were out here to say goodbye, to a brother, to a hero, to a man who never made it to his 39th birthday. Karen was right about one thing. This wasn't a parade. It was a funeral procession. And it was about to change everything. I moved into the neighborhood about 6 years ago. It was peaceful back then. Quiet mornings, kids riding bikes in the afternoons. Neighbors waved to each other, and barbecues were common in the summertime. It felt like a place you could finally breathe in. I thought I'd found the perfect spot to settle down after active duty. I wasn't looking for much, just a bit of normal, you know? But things started to change when Karen took over the HOA board. At first it was small stuff, notes in the mailbox about my grass being half an inch too high, a warning about the shade of blue on my mailbox not matching the approved palette. Then came the complaints about flags. I had a small American flag hanging under my porch light. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. But I got a notice for unauthorized decorative items. Karen ran the HOA like it was her personal kingdom. She sent out rule changes monthly. Fines for trash cans left out 15 minutes past collection. Citations for wind chimes being distracting. She even argued that a neighbor's wreath looked too seasonal, in December. What rubbed me the wrong way wasn't just the rules. It was how she looked at people. Like they were intruding on her neighborhood. Like we were guests she was waiting to kick out. She never said anything direct about my service. But I saw her look whenever I wore a veteran's cap. Heard the way her voice tightened when she said, "You military types." Like she was trying not to roll her eyes but couldn't help herself. Still, most of us tried to ignore her. We figured if we stayed quiet she'd eventually get bored. But it didn't go that way. Instead she got louder. And when Tim died, and we tried to honor him the way we knew how, with dignity, respect, and marching music, that's when she lost it. That's when it stopped being petty, and started being personal. Sergeant Tim Jacobs wasn't just my best friend. He was my brother in every way that mattered. We met in Iraq on one of those blistering sand-choked mornings when the sun felt like it could melt the earth. We got stuck together during a forward recon mission, pinned down behind a crumbled wall for 8 hours. 8 hours of trading stories, passing a dented canteen, and figuring out if we were gonna live to see the next sunrise. We did. And from that moment on, we were inseparable. Tim was the kind of guy who never had to raise his voice to be respected. He led by example, not ego. Calm under pressure, quick to laugh. He had this way of making everyone feel like they belonged, like they mattered. That was rare out there. After we got out, we both ended up back home. Different states at first, but when Tim moved 2 blocks down from me 3 years ago, it felt like the universe had done us a favor. He lived in a little ranch-style house with his wife Ellie, and their rescue dog Brutus, the gentlest pit bull you ever met. Tim became the guy who helped mow lawns when someone was sick, who brought over jumper cables when your car wouldn't start. He even coached Little League one summer, despite never having kids of his own. The neighborhood loved him. Well, almost the whole neighborhood. Karen never liked Tim, said he parked too close to the curb, said Brutus, looked aggressive. She once reported his flagpole as an unapproved fixture, even though it was set in concrete and properly permitted. But Tim never bit back. He just smiled, said yes ma'am, and went about his day. Then one morning, I got the call. Massive heart attack. No warning, no signs. Ellie said he was out back playing fetch with Brutus when it happened. Collapsed mid-throw, gone before the ambulance could get there. I sat on my porch for a long time that day, staring at nothing. We'd been through so much together. Sandstorms, firefights, months in the desert. And after all that, it was a quiet backyard that took him away. We couldn't let him go without honor. So, a few of us from the local veteran community got together. We decided on a small, respectful memorial. No big spectacle. Just a slow, solemn march from Tim's house to the neighborhood chapel. A flag bearer. A few quiet snare drums. Dress uniforms. Folded flags. It wasn't about making noise. It was about memory. We coordinated everything. Let the HOA know. Sent emails. Got written permission from the city. The neighbors were all on board. Some even offered to help. Everyone understood. Everyone except Karen. To her it was just another violation, another excuse to waive a rulebook and call the cops. But what she didn't understand was that this wasn't just some ceremony. This was goodbye. And we were going to make sure Tim got the kind of send-off that men like him deserve, no matter who tried to stop us. We weren't trying to stir up trouble. All we wanted was to honor our brother the right way. So we did everything by the book. We planned the procession down to the smallest detail. The route would start from Tim's driveway and wind through the neighborhood, just 4 blocks, ending at the small chapel on the hill where Ellie arranged the service. No busy roads, no crowds, just a few friends and fellow veterans walking together. Slow, steady, respectful. We sent out notices to all the neighbors, letting them know the date and time. Most responded with kind words, offers of support, even tears. One neighbor baked muffins for the family. Another offered their driveway for overflow parking. We reached out to the city to make sure there were no permits needed for foot traffic. They gave us a thumbs up, even offered to send a patrol car to watch the intersections, just in case. And yes, we even notified the HOA. We knew who we were dealing with, so we emailed everything, a full week in advance. Time, route, number of participants. We included details about the music, just a pair of snare drums and a speaker playing low-volume marching cadence. No horns, no booming bass, just rhythm to keep us in step. We attached our veteran group's registration, mentioned the occasion, a memorial for Sergeant Tim Jacobs, and requested their blessing, out of courtesy. No reply from Karen, but the HOA office manager, an older man named Doug, emailed back with a short note. Condolences for your loss. Thank you for the heads up. Consider it approved. That was enough for us. We laid out the uniforms 2 nights before, pressed and clean, flags folded, shoes shined, medals polished. Ellie had her black dress ready, and Brutus had a red, white, and blue bandana. Tim had bought him last year. It was all set. We weren't putting on a show. We were walking with a purpose, for a friend, for a soldier, for a man whose memory deserved to be carried through his own neighborhood with dignity. We thought we'd prepared for everything, but we hadn't prepared for Karen. The morning of the procession was still, silent, the kind of silence that feels like the world is holding its breath. We gathered in front of Tim's house just after dawn. Ellie stood by the porch, clutching the folded uniform we'd placed in a memory box. Brutus sat at her side, unusually calm, like he knew something sacred was happening. One by one, the veterans arrived. Quiet nods, no small talk, just the sound of shoes crunching gravel, the occasional rustle of a flag in the morning breeze. At exactly 7 a.m., the drums began. Soft, steady, reverent, just a slow cadence. Thump, 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 echoing down the block. We took our places, 8 of us in uniform, 2 carrying flags, the rest falling into line. Our boots hit the pavement together, each step a small act of honor. We hadn't made it 30 feet when the front door across the street flew open, and out came Karen, hair still in rollers, holding a steaming mug like it might be a weapon. Her voice cut through the air like a siren. Turn that off right now. We kept walking. She marched halfway into the road, waving her hands like she was directing traffic. This is a violation of HOA noise policy. It's not even 8 a.m. I could hear the others tense up behind me, feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface, but no one broke formation. She wasn't done. I told you people this isn't a military base. You can't just play drums and march around like you own the place. Ellie was frozen on the steps, eyes wide. Brutus growled low in his throat. Then came the worst part. Karen looked directly at our uniforms and sneered. Is this some kind of cosplay? This isn't a real parade. This is just theatrics. You can't play soldier in the middle of a neighborhood. I stopped walking. Not because I was angry, although I was, but because the sheer disrespect of her words hit like a gut punch. This wasn't playing. This was grief. I looked at her and said, as calmly as I could, "Ma'am, this is a funeral procession." She blinked, confused, then scoffed. "You think that gives you a free pass? I'm calling the police." And she did. Right there in the middle of the road, she whipped out her phone and dialed. She spoke loudly enough for all of us to hear. "Yes, there's a group of men in military costumes causing a disturbance. Yes, they're making noise, violating HOA rules. You need to send someone now." The drums kept going. So did we, but every step forward felt heavier, like we were marching through mud. The air wasn't just quiet now, it was tense. And somewhere inside me, something broke a little. Not because Karen tried to stop us, but because she didn't even try to understand. We were halfway down the block when we heard the cruiser. The low hum of the engine broke the morning quiet. Karen's smirk was visible from yards away. She stood at the edge of her lawn, arms crossed, sipping her coffee like she'd just won some great battle. The patrol car rolled to a slow stop beside the procession. We paused. The drums fell silent. The officer stepped out. Young guy, maybe mid-30s, clean-cut, sharp eyes. He scanned the group slowly. The flags, the uniforms, the solemn faces. Then he saw Ellie. Then he saw me. And then he saw the nameplate on the memorial display being carried at the front of the line. Sergeant Timothy Jacobs. The officer's jaw tensed. He straightened up, removed his cap, and gave a full salute. Every veteran in the line returned it without hesitation. Silent, strong. Karen, still holding her mug, shouted from her porch, "Well, are you going to stop this nonsense, or not?"
The officer ignored her completely. He walked up to me, hand extended. "You were with Jacobs in Iraq." I nodded. "We served together." His voice cracked just slightly. "I was a private back then. He was my squad leader, saved my life outside Fallujah." I nodded again, too choked up to speak. He turned, finally, to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, calm but firm, "what's taking place here is a lawful, permitted funeral procession honoring a decorated combat veteran. Under both state and federal law, this group has the right to assemble and honor their fallen brother with due respect."
Karen's smug look faded. "I was told." "You were told wrong," he cut in gently. "And if you attempt to interfere again, you may be the one violating ordinance. I suggest you return to your home." Karen didn't reply. She just glared at us, then slowly backed up toward her porch. The officer turned back to us. "Carry on, gentlemen, and thank you, all of you." He stepped aside. The drums began again. And this time, they sounded just a little louder. The officer gave a nod, stepped aside, and let us continue. We fell back into formation. The drums picked up their quiet rhythm again. Not louder in volume, but deeper somehow. More purposeful, like each beat carried the weight of memory. We turned the corner, moving deeper into the neighborhood. That's when the doors began to open. One by one, neighbors stepped out onto their porches, some in slippers, some still in pajamas, some holding kids in their arms. No one spoke. No one needed to. They just stood, hands over hearts, heads bowed. One older man removed his cap and held it tight to his chest. A woman near the corner had tears streaming down her face, her hands folded like she was praying. And the silence, it wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, full of respect, full of every unspoken word we all wished we'd said to Tim while he was still here. Ellie walked behind us now, holding the folded flag we'd prepared for her. She didn't cry, not in front of us, but her lips trembled, and her grip never loosened. Brutus stayed close, leash in hand, tail still, eyes forward. We reached the final stretch, the small slope up to the chapel. The air felt heavier, like even the sky was mourning. The drummers slowed their pace. Each beat now felt like a heartbeat, deliberate, final. When we reached the doors, we stopped. The drums fell silent, and the world held still. There's something about silence after ceremony that you never forget. It doesn't echo, it settles, like a blanket or a goodbye you're not ready for. That silence was louder than Karen's shouting had ever been. We stood there for a long moment. Some of us closed our eyes. Some whispered their own farewells under breath. I looked at the flag in Ellie's arms, then at the faces around me, each one marked by grief, pride, and the quiet strength of shared loss. Tim wasn't just a soldier. He was a neighbor, a friend, a brother. And in those last few blocks, he reminded an entire neighborhood what honor looks like. No grand speeches, no headlines, just boots on pavement and hearts wide open. We had carried him home. We thought that would be the end of it. A quiet farewell, a solemn march. Let the neighborhood remember Tim for who he was, not for what Karen tried to turn it into. But it didn't stay quiet. One of the neighbors, a teenager named Mia, who lived 2 doors down, had recorded the whole thing from her phone, starting with Karen's yelling, all the way through to the officer saluting us. She uploaded it that same afternoon with the title, "Wito Ichua Karen Tries to Shut Down Veterans Funeral Procession." By nightfall, it had over 50,000 views. By morning, half the town had seen it. The local paper picked it up the next day. Front page, HOA member disrespects veteran funeral procession. Community responds. They interviewed Ellie, talked to some of the neighbors, even spoke to the officer who had served under Tim. The article was respectful, honest and firm. It didn't smear Karen, it let her own actions do the talking. But the real twist came a few days later. The HOA called a special meeting. Karen didn't show up. She didn't have to. The vote was unanimous. She was removed from the board. Not just suspended, removed. No more fines, no more threats, no more shouting across lawns like she owned the place. The HOA issued a formal apology to the Jacobs family. Doug, the office manager, even came by in person to deliver it. Tim never wanted attention. He just wanted respect. And in the end, he got it. Not just from his fellow veterans, but from the very neighborhood Karen thought she controlled. Sometimes, people forget that remembrance doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. That day, our boots on the pavement, the slow beat of those drums, the folded flag in Ellie's arms, that wasn't about making noise. That was about making meaning. That music Karen tried to stop, it wasn't noise. It was honor. It was the sound of respect being given, of pain being carried, of a life being remembered. Tim wasn't the kind of man who demanded attention. He never bragged about his service, never asked for recognition. But when he passed, we couldn't just let him go in silence, because silence can feel like forgetting, and forgetting is something we can't afford. It hurts losing someone like him, a friend, a brother, a man who stood by you when everything was falling apart. That grief doesn't vanish, not after the procession ends, not when the drums go quiet, but honoring him, even in a small way, helped carry that weight.
I'll never forget the neighbors who stood with us, the ones who stepped outside, not because they had to, but because they felt it. I'll never forget the officer who saluted us like we still mattered, or the teenager who captured the truth on camera without even realizing how much it would change. Grief can make you feel alone, but that day showed me we weren't. We stood together, we remembered together, and no matter what anyone says, no HOA rule, no angry voice on a porch, that matters. Some people don't understand sacrifice until it touches their doorstep, until it's their friend, their neighbor, their family member who's gone too soon. That's when respect isn't just a word, it's a responsibility. Have you ever had to stand up for someone's memory? Have you ever faced pushback when all you wanted was to honor a life? What would you have done in my shoes, standing there with a folded flag, watching someone try to silence the sound of goodbye? I want to hear your stories, whether you've stood up for veterans, fought for a lost loved one, or faced your own battles in your community. Your voice matters. Leave a comment below and share what you've been through. Together, we can remind the world that respect is never optional, especially for those who gave everything. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow and lets us share more stories that need to be heard. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear that respect still matters, especially for the heroes who aren't here anymore, but whose memories deserve to live on. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay kind, and never forget,